Tick tock, tock, tick tock, tick. Dr. Dre and Ice Cube on some murder and shit.
Two of the most iconic names in rap, Dr. Dre and Ice Cube, were once on the verge of releasing a collaborative album. This is the full and detailed breakdown of the unreleased Helter Skelter album. This topic was requested a couple of times in the comments, so in this video we'll cover all the background information that is known about this project. I will also do a breakdown of all the tracks that we know of that were recorded for this album, and we will dive deeper into several reasons why this album was never released by Dr. Dre and Ice Cube. So without further ado, let's dive straight into the topics of this video. And we will start off with some background information about the concept for this album. And it's commonly known that Dr. Dre and Ice Cube were both part of the group N.W.A, and Ice Cube left N.W.A in '89 and he walked away because he felt he was being underpaid or not paid at all for the work he had done. And this split sparked an instant beef between Ice Cube and the rest of the N.W.A crew. And in '92, Dr. Dre made the same move, also walking away from Ruthless Records over money disputes and internal politics. This shared frustration and mutual resentment led Dre and Ice Cube to reconnect. In the early 90s, Dr. Dre started D.O.C Records together with Suge Knight, and rumors started swirling when Ice Cube made a surprise cameo in Dr. Dre's music video for the track Let Me Ride. This was a track from The Chronic, which was Dre's first solo album released under D.O.C Records, and it was dominating the charts and redefining West Coast sound. And because Ice Cube made a cameo in the Let Me Ride video, fans were wondering if a collaboration between Dre and Ice Cube was in the works. Then came the announcement. Dr. Dre and Ice Cube were officially working on an album together. The project was called Helter Skelter, a title inspired by the Beatles song. The Helter Skelter scenario is also an apocalyptic vision that was supposedly embraced by cult leader Charles Manson and members of his family. The concept for the album by Dre and Cube was dark, chaotic, and Dre was set to handle all the production. And Ice Cube together with the D.O.C would handle most of the lyrics for the tracks. Dre never really wrote his own lyrics, and it's common knowledge that Dr. Dre often used ghostwriters for his lyrics. Dre also spoke about the Helter Skelter project in an interview he did shortly after the Murder Was the Case movie soundtrack dropped. He made it clear their focus was now on Helter Skelter.
No, actually, I'm just getting ready to put full steam ahead on the Helter Skelter project. Right. You know.
When can we look forward to that though? Cause I want to hear something. You know what I'm saying? You and Cube together. You and Cube together. That's slamming.
Yeah, probably next year sometime.
Next year sometime.
In another interview with MTV, Dr. Dre also spoke about Helter Skelter, and he said one track was already finished for it, and he also said this project was the best thing he had worked on so far.
The name of the album is called Helter Skelter. We've already did the first song, and it's incredible. It's about the best thing I've done.
Suge also said in an interview that he did at the Murder Was the Case release party that Helter Skelter was the next D.O.C album that would drop, and it would probably be released somewhere in March of '95.
What's next for D.O.C?
Yeah, we got a whole variety of shit. We got the Helter Skelter, of course, Dre and Ice Cube. We got the Dog Pack.
When that's gonna drop?
Probably like around March.
The original plan was to record 12 tracks for the album. 8 of them would feature both Dre and Ice Cube. 2 tracks would spotlight Dr. Dre and his D.O.C camp, and 2 tracks would come from Ice Cube's side of the fence. And Dre also mentioned this in an interview that he did with Fab 5 Freddy.
Me and Cube got together a few days ago, and we're getting ready to start on our album. What the plan is, he's gonna do 2 solo cuts on the album. I'm gonna do 2 solo cuts on the album, and the rest we're gonna do together. We're gonna put like about 10, maybe 11 songs on the album. His camp is gonna be involved in his solo projects, his 2 songs. My camp are gonna be involved in my 2 solo my 2 solo projects on the album. And we're gonna do everything else together.
The Helter Skelter album was also officially announced in several booklets and covers of other D.O.C Records releases. As you can see at the bottom of this image that was inside of the booklet of a D.O.C release, you can see that the Dr. Dre and Ice Cube Helter Skelter album was mentioned as a project that would soon be released by D.O.C Records. The Helter Skelter album was also announced on some editions of Snoop Dogg's first album Doggy Style on the back cover, as you can see on the image on the screen right now. A poster was also available for a short time in '94 with a painted Dr. Dre who's wearing a white Helter Skelter baseball cap. And now let's do a breakdown of all the tracks that we know of that was meant for the Helter Skelter album. If there's one track that gives us a glimpse into what Helter Skelter might have been, it's Natural Born Killers. It was released in October of '94, and Natural Born Killers marked the long-awaited reunion of Ice Cube and Dr. Dre, and it was the first time they appeared together on a track since both rappers split from their former group N.W.A. The single dropped on the Murder Was the Case soundtrack, produced by Dr. Dre and Sam Sneed. The song was dark, aggressive, and it was a perfect reflection of the apocalyptic vision behind the Helter Skelter project. It was originally intended to be the lead single from the Helter Skelter album. A music video was also released for Natural Born Killers, and this was nearly a short film in its own right. In the music video, there's even a quick cameo from none other than Tupac, who was not signed to D.O.C Records at this point. The version of Natural Born Killers that was intended for Helter Skelter is basically the same beat, but without the keyboards that were later added by Superfly to give it a more horror vibe. Before the final version was released on the Murder Was the Case movie soundtrack, a couple of other versions were also recorded. The very first version is a track by Sam Sneed titled The Heist, featuring Sharif and Drama. This was the original concept for the track, and it evolved into Natural Born Killers. The Heist is an unreleased track, but it leaked online in low quality. If you pay attention to the beat, you can hear that it has some similar elements as the Natural Born Killers beat.
Ayo, it's time to bounce. The destination is Reno. The mission is the heist of casino.
Another unreleased version of Natural Born Killers featured Dr. Dre, Ice Cube, and Sam Sneed. Sam Sneed had 2 verses on it, and Ice Cube only appeared on the chorus and the break of the track. This version, that also leaked online, had Sneed rapping heavily about themes and scenes from Oliver Stone's Natural Born Killers movie. And this version was probably originally recorded to be part of the Natural Born Killers soundtrack, and Sam Sneed's lyrics also had some references to the movie.
Headed for hell, I gives a fuck about a jail cell. My partner in crime's a loony ill chick from a sick clicker.
On the Natural Born Killers soundtrack, 2 other D.O.C tracks were included, which are Dr. Dre's The Day the Ends Took Over, that was also released on the Chronic album, and the second D.O.C track that appeared on the Natural Born Killers soundtrack is the Dog Pound's What Would You Do, that was also released on the Murder Was the Case movie soundtrack. And supposedly the Natural Born Killers version with Sam Sneed was supposed to appear on the soundtrack, but it was replaced by The Days the Ends Took Over instead. I suspect the real reason they took Sam Sneed's verses off and replaced him with Ice Cube is because the Sam Sneed version of Natural Born Killers had some clear references to the movie Natural Born Killers, and I think therefore it wasn't suitable for the Murder Was the Case movie soundtrack, and that's why Ice Cube was asked to record some verses too, and they took Sam Sneed off the track and they put Ice Cube on it instead. In an interview, Ice Cube said the initial idea was to only let him do a break on Natural Born Killers, and a few days later, Dre called him to ask him to write some verses too.
Actually, I just had this track here, and called Cube. I was like, yo, got this track, come over and spit something on it, you know? He was like, yo, bam, here.
At first, he just had me doing a break. That's it? Yeah, and
I didn't want to bring that up.
I was in there like, damn, I'm just doing a break. So, you know, he called me a couple of days later and said, man, why don't you write some lyrics and do a verse to it?
So after Ice Cube recorded his verses, they replaced Sam Sneed's verses with Ice Cube's verses, and to make it up to Sam Sneed, they gave him a solo track on the Murder Was the Case movie soundtrack, which was the track You Better Recognize. And they also shot a music video for that track, and Sam Sneed also made a short appearance in the Murder Was the Case short movie.
Sam Sneed, better recognize.
The next track that we will cover in this video, that's tied to the Lost Helter Skelter album, is one that true West Coast heads will instantly recognize. The song is called Can't See Me. It was originally produced by Dr. Dre, and it's a high energy G-Funk track that was supposed to feature both Dr. Dre and Ice Cube alongside none other than George Clinton. Ice Cube wrote all the verses, 2 for Dre and 2 for himself. And the plan was for the track to be the lead single for Helter Skelter, titled You Don't Want to See Me. Unfortunately, the version with Dr. Dre and Ice Cube was never released and it never leaked out. But a fun fact is that on the same day it was recorded, George Clinton also recorded the track Doggy Style with Snoop that was supposed to be released on Snoop's first solo album titled Doggy Style, but eventually it didn't make it on the final release. But years later it was released on the Lost Sessions album in 2009. In the Source magazine edition of September '93, It was mentioned that the track You Don't Want to See Me by Ice Cube and Dr. Dre would be the lead single of the Helter Skelter album. And in the article they mentioned this. Since Dre's breakup with Easy, there has been speculation about a reunion between him and Ice Cube. Dre confirms the rumors. We planned on doing this a long time ago, but we had to go through all the drama and shit. We got a chance to come together. Everybody's heads are on straight and the offer is a nice amount of money. The album is tentatively titled Helter Skelter and will be released on Death Row Records. Dre plans to share production duties with Cube's camp. You Don't Want to See Me, the project's first single, features a guest appearance by George Clinton. The instrumental of the Dre and Ice Cube track You Don't Want to See Me was later given to Dez and Corrupt of the Dog Pound and would be released on their first album Dog Food. The track is also listed as You Can't See Me on an early Dog Food press kit. After recording the song for the Dog Food album, Dez had second thoughts about releasing it. Supposedly, he felt that Dre cheated him out of his production credits on the Chronic and Doggy Style albums, and with this in mind, he decided to limit Dre's involvement on Dog Food to strictly mixing and therefore removed You Can't See Me from the final tracklist for the album. But the Dog Pound version of Can't See Me was leaked in low quality and you can find it online.
Take it round, get hit and lay it with a touch of this and a touch of that. And a homie like a rebel definitely got my back.
Because the beat wasn't used for the Dog Food album, it was later given to Tupac for his album All Eyes on Me, and Tupac absolutely killed the beat. The next track on our list, that according to some sources was intended for the Helter Skelter album, is the original version of California Love that only features Dr. Dre and Roger Troutman. On this original version, Dr. Dre had 2 verses, and it was originally intended to be the lead single for Dr. Dre's The Chronic 2, and some even believe it might have ended up on the Helter Skelter album. Just like the beat for Can't See Me, this instrumental was later given to Tupac and Dre's second verse was replaced. Up next you can hear a small clip of Dre's unreleased verse.
I'm on a mission to keep your heads ringing and keep your body shaking, plus bring home the bacon. I puff herb like a Jamaican.
Another track that was intended for the Helter Skelter album is titled Indonesia. It was meant to be a weed-themed track featuring 2 verses from Dr. Dre and 2 verses from Ice Cube, with the hook performed by Ice Cube as well. While the full track has never leaked, the instrumental has, and it fits perfectly with the concept of a smooth, weed-inspired song. Check it out. And that brings us to the next track, which is Game Over. This is a collaboration between Dr. Dre and Ice Cube featuring Scarface. It was originally recorded for the Helter Skelter project, and ultimately it ended up on Scarface's album The Untouchable. That version also featured Scarface, Ice Cube and Dr. Dre, and Too Short does some talking on the intro. The beat matches the dark, aggressive vibe associated with the Natural Born Killers track, and in Dre's verse he also mentioned Helter Skelter. Overall, Game Over is a very solid track, so make sure to check it out. And now let's go over to the next track on our list, which is My Life, Smoking Weed for Hours. Rumors have circulated that this unreleased Dr. Dre track was originally meant for the Chronic 2. However, some theories say that it was a solo Dre joint intended for Helter Skelter. As mentioned earlier in this video, Dre and Ice Cube were each expected to have a couple of solo tracks alongside a few collaborative tracks. Dre also mentions Ice Cube in the lyrics of his first verse, and this possibly indicates that the track was indeed meant for Helter Skelter.
Ice Cube was performing, yeah, he ain't no joke. Him and a bunch of Brooklyn serving nothing but dope.
The D.O.C. also makes a brief appearance on the track, which further supports the idea that it was recorded during the Helter Skelter era, as D.O.C. was also involved in that project.
He said,
these papers fucked up, my nigga, you can check it out. If your shit fucked you, let's put our own fucking reconcile.
The title of the next track is unknown, but in a '94 interview with Dr. Dre and Ice Cube, they discussed the Helter Skelter project among some other things, and in the background of that interview, the Natural Born Killers instrumental can be heard, followed by another beat that was most likely intended for the Helter Skelter album. And up next is a small audio clip of that instrumental. While the sound quality is very poor, it still gives a rough idea of what the beat sounds like. The next track is titled Gimme 50 Feet. It was supposedly recorded for the Helter Skelter album as well. The track is never leaked, so not much is known about it, and from what I've gathered, it was more of an Ice Cube track, but Dr. Dre was also involved as well. The title of the next track is The Grand Final 2. That was supposedly also intended for the Helter Skelter album. Not much is known about it, but it seems to reference the final track from the D.O.C's 1989 debut album, No One Can Do It Better, which ended with the grand final, a song featuring N.W.A, including Dr. Dre and Ice Cube. It's likely that the grand final 2 was inspired by that track, however it was never released and it remains unclear whether the track was ever actually recorded. Before we continue with the breakdown of the next 3 tracks that were meant for Helter Skelter, I need to briefly explain the fallout between Dr. Dre and the D.O.C in '95. Because a few tracks that were originally intended for the Helter Skelter album by Dr. Dre and Ice Cube eventually ended up on the D.O.C's album, also titled Helter Skelter, but not featured Dr. Dre or Ice Cube. As mentioned a couple of times in this video, the D.O.C was a ghostwriter for the Helter Skelter project, and in an interview he explained, quote, "I wrote a song, we started working on an album. He, referring to Dr. Dre, wanted to work on an album with Ice Cube, and it was supposed to be called Helter Skelter, and he gave me all of these books to read, apocalyptic books. He wanted me to get started for him, so I did." End quote. Eventually a fallout occurred between the D.O.C, D.O.C, and Dr. Dre. The story goes that during the recording sessions for Helter Skelter, the D.O.C was struggling with his voice and grew frustrated with contributing creative content without receiving proper credit or compensation. Because of a car accident, the D.O.C had lost his original voice, and after the accident his voice became raspy. The D.O.C believed he was still capable of rapping, while Dre reportedly disagreed. This created tension, and the D.O.C was likely upset that Dre and Cube planned to move forward with the album without him, simply because of his vocal limitations. So without Dre's support and without his normal speaking voice, the D.O.C felt increasingly isolated at Death Row. In '95, he left the label, taking the Helter Skelter reels and lyrics he had ghostwritten with him. In an act of defiance toward Dr. Dre and Death Row, the D.O.C released his own version of Helter Skelter in January of '96, using lyrics he had originally written for Dre and Cube. This release was clearly a shot at Dr. Dre. In Dr. Dre's The Source interview from July '96, he addressed the situation between him and the D.O.C. And here is a part of what is mentioned in the article, and it said, "But despite making amends with his N.W.A chumps and RBX, don't look for Dre to bring back another one of his former running buddies." Quote by Dr. Dre, "Man, F the D.O.C. And he continues, "Print it. D.O.C ain't shit, but he's my dude. Let me explain that shit to you. As far as business goes, F D.O.C. That mother effer did some old shiesty shit, trying to force my name on some shit. Stole my title, Helter Skelter, which is a title that I came up with for me and Cube's album. He was always talking about the title. Next thing I know, that's what his album is called. So F D.O.C. Plus he's trying to sue me about some other shit. Me and D.O.C will never do another business deal ever again in life. He has a massive ego. What he should have did instead of trying to rap himself was just face the facts. My," referring to D.O.C's album, "ish don't sound right. He just should have took the money that he got to do his record and started some kind of label or production company. And his album, that shit ain't gonna go copper." End quote. It turned out Dre was right, because the D.O.C's Helter Skelter album flopped commercially, even though many rap fans still consider it a solid album. The likely reason for its poor performance was probably the D.O.C's raspy voice that simply didn't connect with the mainstream audience. But several tracks on the album still carry a strong Natural Born Killers / Helter Skelter vibe. And the next tracks we'll cover in this video were originally intended for Dre and Ice Cube's Helter Skelter project, but ended up on the D.O.C's album. Secret Plan is the 4th track on the D.O.C's Helter Skelter album, and it has a vibe very similar to the Natural Born Killers track by Dre and Ice Cube. Secret Plan was produced by Dr. Dre and meant for the Helter Skelter album. The original instrumental is nearly identical to the beat that was released on the D.O.C's album, though it was slightly tweaked.
I have a secret plan. New world connects and wrecks man. Other hand.
This probably was one of the reels that the D.O.C took with him when he left Death Row Records. In my opinion, this is one of the best tracks on the D.O.C's album, but I'm very curious to hear how it would have sounded with the vocals from Dr. Dre and Ice Cube, but unfortunately we will never know. The next track is titled The Hereafter, and it's the 11th track on the D.O.C's Helter Skelter album. This track was identified as one of the songs originally meant for the Helter Skelter album, and the instrumental comes from one of the reels the D.O.C took with him when he left Death Row. The actual beat was produced by Dr. Dre, but the version released on the D.O.C's album was slightly tweaked, and interestingly, in the album credits, the D.O.C is listed as the producer instead of Dr. Dre, and that's also the case with the production credits for the track The Secret Plan. Up next is a small clip of the original instrumental of The Hereafter. It's notable that Return of the Living Dead is also the only other song where the D.O.C is listed as the sole producer, just like Secret Plan and The Hereafter. Two tracks we know were actually produced by Dr. Dre. Most likely, Return of the Living Dead was also produced by Dr. Dre, and the instrumental was intended for Dre and Cube's Helter Skelter album. The beat closely resembles the one used for It's Funky Enough on the D.O.C's debut album No One Can Do It Better, which was also produced by Dr. Dre. A little fun fact is that a sample of this beat was later also used for the track That's Gangsta by Shine, who was signed to Bad Boy Records at the time. And the D.O.C also appears in Shine's music video. I suspect the instrumental for the Return of the Living Dead was originally a Dre production that was slightly altered for the D.O.C's Helter Skelter album to remove Dre's producer credit.
It's the D to D.O.C. I dropped a synopsis with lots of what people want.
There's also a remix of the Return of the Living Dead released as a part of the single, and this version definitely carries that classic Dr. Dre vibe as well.
D.O.C. I dropped a synopsis.
Commercial is another title I came across during my research as a track originally intended for Dre and Cube's Helter Skelter album. On the D.O.C's album, track 5 is a skit titled Commercial, and track 15 is also called Commercial, which is a short track of about 1 minute. It could be the case that this instrumental might have been meant for the Helter Skelter project by Dre and Cube.
Come on. 1995.
It's possible that there are other tracks on the D.O.C's album whose beats and/or lyrics were also intended for Dre and Cube's Helter Skelter album. If you have any additional information or insights, please share them in the comments. Now, I'm not sure how reliable this information is, but during my research I came across a few more titles that were supposedly meant for the Helter Skelter album. There's no further information available about these tracks, but for completeness, I wanted to briefly mention them in this video. And supposedly there was a track titled Ends Without Easy. It was a Dre and Ice Cube track, and based on the title, this appears to be a jab at Eazy-E. Another title I came across is F with Dre Day 2. This would be a follow-up to Dre Day from the Chronic album, which originally featured Dr. Dre and Snoop, so maybe the idea for Dre Day 2 was to make a version with Dre and Ice Cube. Greed is another title I came across. And on the War and Peace Volume 1 album by Ice Cube, there's also a track with the same title, Greed, so maybe that's related to this track, but I'm not sure about that. And lastly, there's an untitled track featuring Dr. Dre, Ice Cube and Snoop in an interview with Dre and Snoop, where they talked about Helter Skelter, said Snoop Dogg would be featured on it as well.
Yeah, I'm gonna be a part of it, you know what I'm saying, put my little 2 cents in like I did on Dre album to try to contribute to the dopeness.
All these tracks and concepts give us an impression of what the Helter Skelter album could have been. Unfortunately, we will never know exactly because it was never released. And now let's cover some possible reasons why the album never came out. And there are several reasons for this. One is that Dre was involved in multiple projects and didn't have time to fully focus on Helter Skelter. Another reason could be that Ice Cube was not a death row artist, which made it more complicated from a business standpoint to properly organize and release the album. In an interview, Ice Cube mentioned that he was still interested in releasing the Helter Skelter album and that he had plenty of lyrics ready. However, he said that ultimately it was up to Dre whether the album would be released, since Dre was the producer and had to make the beats.
Basically, people asking me, when is this gonna pop? When is this gonna pop? It ain't gonna pop till Dre says it's gonna pop because he gotta do the music. I got rhymes. It's not like I ain't got nothing to rap about.
Ice Cube also said that Dr. Dre's success with Eminem and 50 Cent was a reason why Dre didn't spend more time on the Helter Skelter album.
What happened to Helter Skelter was Eminem and 50 Cent. That's what happened to Helter Skelter. They blew, when we was like thinking about doing that project, these Eminem come in, he blow the doors off the Interscope. Dre has to turn his focus strictly on that, which he should. He had to run on that train. As soon as that train started to die down, here come 50. which was a whole nother train, and then the game. So a whole bunch of good shit happened that put this project on the back burner.
Now I don't think this was the real reason though, because the plan was to release Helter Skelter in the summer of '95, while Eminem and 50 Cent only became major artists several years later, around '99. It's more likely that the arrival of Tupac at Death Row shifted all focus toward releasing his album. And when his album became a big success, Tupac essentially became the center of attention and Death Row's main artist. Not long after Tupac signed with Death Row, a rift developed between Death Row and Dr. Dre, which eventually led to Dre deciding to leave the label. Even years later, people are still talking about the Helter Skelter album by Dre and Ice Cube and how it could have been a legendary release. Tracks like Natural Born Killers and Game Over offer a glimpse into the creative synergy between two rap legends at the peak of their careers. For fans, it's at least a positive that several tracks intended for Helter Skelter were released on other projects, and some original versions or leaks have surfaced. But of course, it's still a shame we'll never hear the full album in its entirety. As mentioned earlier, I'd really appreciate it if you could share any additional information you have in the comments that I might have missed in this video. I'll gather all the extra info from the comments and combine it into a pinned comment to make the Helter Skelter story as complete as possible. Also let me know if you enjoyed this video, and I'd really appreciate it if you subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. According to the stats, most viewers aren't subscribed yet, so show some support because it's a small effort but a big gesture. There's also a loyal group of subscribers who regularly watch, like and comment on videos. That's truly appreciated. Check out the channel for more Death Row related content, and I'll see you again in the next video.